Imagine living in a world without penicillin, without microwaves, or even without those famous little yellow post-its that stick to everything. Hard to picture, right? Well, what few people know is that many of the inventions we now use in our daily lives came about by accident. It wasn't careful planning or calculated genius, it was pure chance mixed with a bit of curiosity. It's incredible to think that the history of science and technology is filled with these slip-ups that ended up changing the course of humanity. Seriously, many scientists were working on something completely different when, out of nowhere, they stumbled upon discoveries no one could have imagined. It's as if the universe decided to play a game of surprise with them. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Inventions born from mistakes that have become indispensable parts of our everyday lives. Get ready, because each story feels like it's straight out of a movie script, complete with moments of frustration, unexpected twists, and a magical touch of coincidence. After all, who could have imagined that something created by accident would become essential for saving lives, simplifying our routines, or even completely changing the way we interact with the world? Here's a heads up. The first story is worthy of science fiction. A simple oversight in a lab ended up giving birth to one of the most revolutionary discoveries in modern medicine. Want to know what it was? Then stick with me, because you're in for a surprise. Oh, and while you're here, if you enjoy these kinds of curiosities, give us a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next incredible stories. Now, picture this scene. You're a scientist, spending days and nights surrounded by test tubes, bacterial colonies, and experiments that seem to lead nowhere. Then one day you go on vacation, come back to the lab, and find something unexpected. That's exactly what happened to Alexander Fleming in 1928. Fleming was studying dangerous bacteria when he noticed that one of his culture plates had been invaded by a strange fungus. Normally, this would be considered contamination, a reason to toss the entire experiment in the trash. But instead of discarding it, he noticed something curious. Around the fungus, the bacteria simply weren't growing. Imagine the shock. The mistake was actually killing the bacteria. That fungus, later identified as Penicillium notatum, produced a substance capable of destroying harmful microorganisms. Without planning it, Fleming had stumbled upon penicillin, the world's first antibiotic. It was like tripping over a secret key that unlocked the path to saving millions of lives. Before penicillin, a simple infection could be a death sentence. After it, everything changed. Wars, epidemics, hospitals, they all came to rely on this scientific accident. What's even more curious is that at the time, almost no one took the discovery seriously. Fleming knew he had something valuable, but it was only years later that other scientists developed ways to produce penicillin on a large scale. The result? Medicine was never the same again. And if you thought that was incredible, wait until you hear about the next invention. An accident in the kitchen ended up creating one of the most widely used appliances in the modern world. Any guesses? Picture this. You're testing complex military equipment and suddenly realize the chocolate bar in your pocket has melted on its own. It sounds like a cartoon scene, but that's exactly what happened to Percy Spencer, an engineer at Raytheon, in 1945. Spencer was working with a magnetron, a component used in radars during World War II, when he noticed that the chocolate he was carrying had turned into a gooey mess. Intrigued, he decided to run more tests. He placed some corn kernels near the equipment, and guess what? Popcorn started popping all over the lab. He didn't stop there. The next experiment was with an egg. The result? The invisible heat made the egg explode, splattering the entire room and amusing Spencer's colleagues. What seemed like a series of mishaps was actually hiding a revolution. High-frequency radio waves, called microwaves, could cook food quickly. And that's how, from a curious mistake, the microwave oven was born. In the beginning, the appliances were huge, expensive, and mainly used in restaurants and military bases. But over time, they became smaller, more affordable, and found their way into kitchens worldwide. Today, it's hard to imagine life without it. From heating up your morning coffee to making popcorn for movie night, all thanks to a chocolate bar that melted without warning. And speaking of kitchens, the next invention also came about in an unexpected way and ended up adding color to our daily lives. Can you guess what it is? Now think about this. Who hasn't stuck a little yellow note on the fridge, the computer, or even a favorite book? That's right. The famous post-it notes were born from one of the most fortunate failures in the history of science. It all started in the 1960s with a chemist named Spencer Silver who worked at 3M. He was trying to create a super strong adhesive that would stick forever. But to his surprise, the result was the opposite. A weak adhesive that stuck but could be easily removed without leaving a trace. For many, it was a complete failure. Who would want glue that didn't stick properly? Silver, however, was intrigued. He held on to the idea even though he didn't know how to use it. Years later, a colleague named Art Fry faced a curious problem. He sang in a choir and was frustrated because the bookmarks kept falling out of his hymnal. That's when he remembered Silver's forgotten invention. By combining the two ideas, the first prototype of the post-it was born, a piece of paper with the failed adhesive. The result? Instant success. Simple, useful, and incredibly versatile. Today, post-its are in offices, schools, and homes around the world, all because a glue that seemed useless found its true calling. It's fascinating to think how a mistake can become a symbol of organization and creativity. And speaking of mistakes that changed our lives, the next invention started as a frustration at the dinner table, but ended up sweetening the daily lives of millions. Picture this. You're in the lab, knee-deep in chemical experiments, and without realizing it, you bring your hand to your mouth. Suddenly, you taste an intense sweetness, stronger than sugar. Weird, right? Well, that's how, almost by accident, the first artificial sweetener was born. In 1879, chemist Konstantin Fahlberg was working with coal derivatives when he noticed his hands tasted sweet. It might sound gross, after all, who puts lab chemicals in their mouth? But the curious detail is that he hadn't washed his hands before eating. The result? He discovered saccharin, a substance with a sweetening power hundreds of times greater than regular sugar. At first, no one took it seriously. After all, sugar was cheap and widely used. But over time, saccharin became an alternative for diabetics, and later gained popularity among those looking to cut calories without sacrificing sweetness. Of course, the story of artificial sweeteners wasn't all smooth sailing. For decades, there were heated debates about their safety. But the truth is, from an almost trivial oversight, an entire multi-billion-dollar industry was born, sweetening coffees, sodas, and desserts worldwide. Now think about it. What if that hygiene slip-up had never happened? We might still be stuck with sugar as the only option. And speaking of sweet things, the next discovery also happened by chance, but this time inside a boiling cauldron. An invention that changed the way we handle food around the world. Imagine waking up one day and realizing your favorite breakfast was born from a culinary accident. That's exactly how cornflakes were created in the late 19th century by the Kellogg brothers. John Harvey Kellogg and his brother Will Keith Kellogg were responsible for a sanatorium in the United States, where they aimed to provide healthy meals to patients. Their goal was to create simple, nutritious alternatives to the overly indulgent diets of the time. But during one of their experiments with wheat dough, something went wrong. They forgot about the mixture and left it sitting for longer than intended. When they noticed, the dough was odd, but they decided to roll it out anyway. To their surprise, what came out were thin, crispy flakes that after baking became even tastier. This was the birth of breakfast cereals. Later, they swapped wheat for corn, which added even more crunch and won over the taste buds of thousands. It didn't take long for the Kellogg's to turn their mistake into a business, creating one of the world's most famous brands. The most curious part? The invention came from a simple oversight in the kitchen. If they had stuck to the original plan, we might never have known the joy of opening a cereal box and hearing that perfect crunch first thing in the morning. And since we're talking about unexpected food discoveries, the next story will make your mouth water, because it was from a mistake in storing milk that one of the world's most beloved treats was born. Now close your eyes and imagine a massive fair filled with stalls, music, and an air of novelty. We're in 1904 at the St. Louis World's Fair in the United States. There, thousands of people were trying out inventions, exotic foods, and, of course, ice cream. The problem? Ice cream was so popular that vendors ran out of cups and bowls to serve it. Imagine the chaos. huge lines, impatient customers, and nothing to put the frozen dessert in. That's when a Syrian vendor named Ernest Hamwi, who was at a nearby stall, stepped in. He was selling a sweet, thin pastry called zalabia, similar to a crispy pancake. Faced with the crisis, Hamwi had a brilliant idea. He rolled the pastry into a cone shape and offered it to the ice cream vendors to hold their scoops. It was practical, quick, and, as a bonus, edible. The result? An instant hit. The ice cream cone became a star of the fair and from there spread across the world. What started as an improvised solution to a logistical problem turned into a global classic. Today, it's hard to separate ice cream from its crunchy cone. It's almost impossible to imagine one without the other. And it all began spontaneously on a hot day with a shortage of cups. But not all accidental discoveries came from cute or tasty situations. Some were born in moments of pure tragedy and ended up changing the course of medicine forever. Now picture this scene. You're in a dark laboratory surrounded by glass tubes, electricity, and noisy machines. That's how German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen spent his days in the late 19th century. He was investigating the effects of electrical discharges in vacuum tubes when something strange happened. While working, Röntgen noticed that a fluorescent screen, not even close to the experiment, started glowing. The oddest part, there were obstacles between the tube and the screen, yet the mysterious light passed through everything. Intrigued, he conducted several tests until, in one of them, he placed his hand in front of the screen and nearly fell out of his chair. He could see the bones of his fingers projected. It was so unprecedented, it seemed like magic. Röntgen had discovered an invisible form of radiation capable of passing through human tissue and revealing internal structures. He called it X-rays because he wasn't entirely sure what they were. The impact was immediate. Within a few years, hospitals worldwide were using the technology to diagnose fractures, tumors, and countless other conditions. From a lab accident, one of the most revolutionary tools in modern medicine was born. And the irony? Röntgen didn't patent his discovery because he believed science should serve humanity. Thanks to that decision, X-rays spread quickly and saved millions of lives. And since we're talking about science that crosses borders, the next invention also came about unexpectedly. And today is essential even for your earbuds or computer. Imagine being in a lab, trying to create a super powerful gas for refrigerators and accidentally inventing something that would forever change kitchens and even the space industry. Sounds unlikely, right? But that's exactly what happened to chemist Roy Plunkett in 1938. Plunkett was working for DuPont, testing new gases for refrigeration systems. In one experiment, he left a cylinder filled with tetrafluoroethylene stored at a very low temperature. When he returned to use it, he realized the gas had simply vanished. Curious, he opened the cylinder and found a white, solid, and incredibly slippery substance at the bottom. Instead of discarding it, he investigated further. He discovered that the material had remarkable properties. It didn't react with almost anything, could withstand high temperatures, and was unbelievably smooth. Thus, polytetrafluoroethylene, better known by its commercial name, Teflon, was born. Teflon started being used in military and industrial equipment, but soon gained fame in a much more familiar place: non-stick pans. Who hasn't marveled at frying an egg without it sticking to the pan? Even more impressive is that this accident also contributed to cutting-edge fields like space exploration and the manufacturing of cables and insulators. All because a gas decided to transform into something completely unexpected. And speaking of unexpected transformations, the final story of our video is about a discovery that radically changed aesthetic medicine and even pop culture. Now hold on to this one. The world's most feared toxin, capable of causing paralysis and even death, became a cosmetic treatment. It's as if a dangerous weapon was turned into a beauty brush. Strange? That's how Botox was born. It all started with studies on Clostridium botulinum, a bacterium responsible for botulism, a severe form of poisoning. Scientists realized that, in tiny doses, the toxin it produced could temporarily paralyze specific muscles. What seemed frightening found a new purpose: treating muscle spasms and neurological disorders. But the big turning point came when doctors noticed a curious side effect. Patients treated with the toxin had smoother skin in the treated area, with fewer wrinkles. From there, it was a short leap to becoming a global cosmetic phenomenon. Today, Botox is used in clinics worldwide, both for medical treatments and to soften signs of aging. All from a substance that in other contexts could be deadly. And that's the magic of these stories. Mistakes, accidents, and even dangers gave rise to inventions that changed our routines, saved lives, and even transformed cultural standards. Who would have thought that a melted chocolate bar, a forgotten fungus, a weak glue, or even a deadly bacterium would end up shaping the world we live in? It sounds like something out of a movie, but it really happened. Now I want to know, which of these discoveries did you find the most impressive? Tell me in the comments, give us a like, and of course, subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the mysteries and curiosities history has in store with me. Because after all, we never know when the next mistake will change everything again.